Today we're going to be talking about how to stop these chaotic launch cycles. So here's a few questions to get you started to understand if this is you, if you are creating launch cycles in your business or not. So number one, are you letting your ideas dictate your launch patterns? When we're talking about the time wheel, TIME, for ideas in the upper hand corner, are the ideas, all of these brilliant ideas is what is fueling your launch cycles. And while try to be Holy Spirit led, let these God-given ideas get downloaded, well, I totally believe in that. There's also another side of the coin where we have to be diligent. We have to be mindful of the other parts of our business. So that was the first question. Are you letting your ideas dictate your launch patterns? The second part is, do you have a team or do you have other people working in your business? They may not necessarily be part of your core team, but you do outsource some stuff to Fiverr, Upwork. You have other people working on things in your business. And this is what I want you to see. Are you dragging your team along for the launch? Or are you letting things happen naturally with a flow without chaos? So the image that I got was dragging your kids through the supermarket. They don't want to be there. And you have an idea of what you want to make for lunch. You got to take your kids with you. If you have smaller kids, older kids, not necessarily, but having your kids along does help. And I used to drag my kids along to shopping because it just really, I hate grocery shopping. The mental fatigue that happens, and I'm trying to decide A or B, and especially after all the dietary restrictions that I have, and then having to accommodate my kids' taste buds and my husband's taste buds, and just trying to figure out a whole thing, which is why I had to make myself a meal planning calendar where I plan my meals around who's going to be home at that time. Having a plan in place allows me to have something to fall back on. How to stop the chaotic cycle of launching. Number one, decide what you're launching and the outcomes. You have to decide, why are we doing this whole thing? What am I launching? You don't necessarily have to go into all the metrics, but at this beginning stage, when you're first deciding what to launch and making a generalized plan about it, you have to decide what you're building and why you're building it. Because if you don't decide this up front, you're going to cause the churn and burn. The ideas are churning. So many ideas. Well, let's do this. Let's do that. Why don't we try this? Why don't we try that? And then the burning of your team, time, energy, and money, the churn and burn. And it's not to say that getting last minute ideas is a bad thing, but are you really counting the cost? There's a Bible verse. When you're looking to build something, have you counted the cost? So some of the things to decide if you feel yourself going through a churn and burn, or maybe just a churn, there's probably a lot of idea churn that is happening. Maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that. Some of the ways that you can avoid the churning part are to ask yourself these questions. Are your ideas even marketable? What that means is, are people actually going to buy your offer? Because it's something that people actually want and they need. And then we can talk about pricing strategies and all of that. But the thing that you're trying to sell, is that something that people actually want or are asking for? Okay, number two. So once you've decided on your offer, once you've decided what you're going to sell and why you're building it, when you can envision people enjoying your products, getting the transformation that your product it actually is promising, when you see the end result and you can envision the end result in your mind, that's when things start to really get exciting. When you're looking at how much income does this product need to generate for you, There's a whole money calculation that you have to do when you're deciding what to launch and when and how and like how much. It's not necessarily about the crunching the numbers and making sure they all line up. For me, it helps me to figure out, is this even worth it? Deciding the dates and reverse engineering your deliverable due dates. And this is for yourself and for your team. If you're a solopreneur and you're doing everything yourself, you still have to come up with a launch timeline so that you know what needs to go out when, so that you're not burning yourself out. So you can plan to write some emails before the launch thing happens. Well, I need to write an email series. Yes, you can write your launch emails as you're launching, but I've done both methods and I've experienced both methods in 6, 7, 8-figure businesses that I've been behind. And I can tell you, having everything laid out up front, having some kind of plan in place makes it that much easier to have something to fall back on. Your team needs a timeline to follow so they're not scrambling last minute to create and schedule content. What is a launch? A launch is pretty much creating content to sell a product, but on a timeline. That's pretty much what a launch is. Whether you are creating a webinar to drive traffic to a sales page, whether you are just creating social media content to drive traffic to a sales page, it's pretty much all of this content you're generating up front in order to drive traffic to a sales page or somewhere where people are going to buy from you. That's pretty much what a launch is in a nutshell. Your contractors are real people with real lives. Don't expect them to jump through hoops to get your ideas going. They work on their own time. So you need to find their rhythm and plan around it. Figure out your work schedule and build enough space around that in order to make sure you meet the timeline. Gary Vee said, this is your baby. Your business is your baby. Your heart, soul, blood, all of your financials are for you. That's why you're building this business, whether you're building this business to generate more income or you're trying to create impact. This is on you as a person, as the business owner. You cannot expect your people to work harder than you do. Okay, number 3 is plan to fail. You have to have a margin of failure built into your project timeline. Murphy's Law, if something can fail, it will. Just saying, failures happen. And when things don't work the way that we want to, it causes extra frustration and stress. When we plan for a failure, it's not that we want things to fail. It's not we're sourcing or manifesting failure, but what we're doing is anticipating the failure and having a plan B or backup plan just in case X happens. We have a fallback plan. Just because you have a launch doesn't mean that things stop. Your business operations is still flowing in the background. You're still nurturing your current clients. You're still working on client work in the background while this launch is running. You can just totally deviate all resources to a launch. You have to figure out how to run these things in tandem so that, again, you stop these chaotic launch cycles. There's so many parallel pathways and timelines that are running. We have to have a plan B. Launching by the seat of your pants and avoiding these chaotic launch cycles is controlling your OPEX. Like, are you prepared to pay that increased cost because you had a last minute idea and now you're driving resources to work on this last minute idea? Marketing needs to shift and change, but at the same time, have you counted the cost? When you're under pressure, your brain's not thinking straight, the quality of your contractor's work will probably go way down if you're trying to always rush and always do things at the last minute. Give your contractors room to do things on their own time. Workload needs to get distributed. I've seen the burnout happen. I've experienced it personally myself. God is our source. He is our provider and he wants us to live in abundance, but we still have to be smart about it. Your desire is to work smarter and not harder, and it's my pleasure to share all of these working smarter tips with you so that you don't work hard and you don't burn yourself out.